Fred VanVleet All-Star. That just sounds good. I mean, it just sounds right. Hey everyone, it's JJ Buckets. I am back and I'm going to just get this out of the way early and apologize in advance if I sound a little funny. I am actually going through my own health and safety protocols. Unfortunately, it just is what it is. It's the reality of living in Ontario. So yeah, like if I sound a little off, you know why. But nonetheless, I still want to get a video out this week talking about everybody's favorite undersized point guard, Mr. Fred VanVleet Sr. So naturally, as is obvious, I think I'm going to be talking about Fred and his All-Star campaign and the chances of him, locking down that All-Star spot for himself. Now, I think he has a great chance, but he definitely has some stiff competition here as well, so I wanted to evaluate who he's competing against, what the case is for him, and at the end of the day, do I legitimately think that Fred VanVleet is going to be an All-Star? So I'm going to hop into the video, but before I do, just make sure to leave a like on it. It helps the algorithm out a lot, and I truly do appreciate it every time you folks do it. With that being said, let's jump in. So I want to give a quick shout out to the GOAT himself, the GOAT, the undeniable, unquestionable GOAT of NBA YouTube, Kenny Beecham, King of the Fourth Quarter. I was watching one of his videos recently talking about the All-Star game, and he made a great point, one that I have agreed with for years. Like, he actually made two great points. The first one is the one that I've also kind of commonly held for years. The second one is something that I also agree with him on, but not necessarily something that I've also been like-minded to over the past few years. But nonetheless, two things that he said in his video. One is the NBAAllStar teams should be full 15-man roster, not 12. Legitimately, as long as the NBA's kind of been around, it's been a 12-man All-Star team, and there's just not the same number of teams at this point in the league that there was in the league's infancy. So I think raising the number of players that are sent to the All-Star game makes sense, just because there's so many guys that are deserving, and every year there's always guys that you feel like get snubbed. So absolutely agree with that point. The other point here that I want to talk about that he mentioned is positionless. Going positionless for the All-Star game. Interesting, and I agree to an extent. I think for the most part, here's where I would kind of draw the line is, if we're talking about the starting lineup, keep it that same old, like, two back court, three front court. But for the benches at least, three positionless players, or sorry, not three positionless players, excuse me. It's the Rona talking. Just having the bench entirely positionless, I think makes a lot of sense. Given the league that we're in, given the state of the game, and frankly, again, a point that he brought up in his video, given how many just better guards there are than forwards in a lot of cases, and like that discrepancy just really shows when it comes to the All-Star game, because I think in any conversation, especially if you're talking about the Eastern Conference guards, one way or another, you're leaving off some very talented, deserving players. So make the benches positionless, raise the number of players to the All-Star game. I am fully with both of those ideas. When it comes to Fred VanVleet's All-Star campaign, it's kind of simple and straight to the point in a good way. Well, first of all, shoutouts to Fred. He is definitely playing some well-timed, just really good basketball. Like, he's obviously gone on a tear of late, individually in terms of his statistics, like his shooting and obviously scoring, and just his game has looked so damn good of late, and it could not have come at a better time for him, obviously, now that like people are campaigning for him to be an All-Star, and he's going out there every night and he's damn sure looking like one. So just on that like face value alone, I think it goes a long way. Past that, I mean, obviously the Raptors have started winning, albeit against some really injury-riddled rosters from other teams. But they've ripped off, what is it now? I believe it's 4 straight wins after Milwaukee, and they're above 500, and they're back I want to say they're back into the top 8 in the standings. They're in a good position. They've won a lot of games, and obviously got the team lobbying for him. You got the players lobbying for him. Like, past that, obviously his defense, I think, is a thing that doesn't get talked about enough, where Fred VanVleet, despite his size, has always just been a tremendous defender, which I think not enough people really paid attention to, just because I feel like Kyle Lowry, more so while he was here, got the credit for being, you know, a really good defender despite not being the biggest guy on the court, that maybe you didn't notice Fred's defense beside him. But I feel like part of the reason why Fred VanVleet and Kyle Lowry work together so well is because Fred has no problems guarding guys that are bigger than him. Like, naturally, you don't want to throw him against like a Giannis or something like that, but like, he has no significant issues just guarding like bigger shooting guards, bigger point guards, etc. He's always been a very good defender, and it's always been a little overshadowed in my mind, so I wanted to give him his kudos on that. The big one here, and I'll get into further detail as to why I think this is gonna play a factor. The on and off numbers for Fred VanVleet look fantastic this season, and I mean, I feel like you can catch it, you know, with just like the eye test, so to speak, that the Raptors are a better team when Fred VanVleet's on the court. Like, I don't think that's a secret by any means. But even if, like, you know, you didn't trust the eye test, you can actually look at the on-off numbers. And for Fred VanVleet, they are damn impressive for this season. And I think that'll play a big factor as to why he could potentially get selected, and I'll talk about it more. But yeah, just like that collection of like all of those things working for him, and it feels like the kitchen top or the stove, whatever the expression is, like it's hot at the right time where he's playing well, the team is playing well, the numbers, you know, both the regular, I guess, numbers, just like your traditional statistics, and the advanced stats just look so good for Fred VanVleet that he's got a great case. The biggest hurdle to overcome, and I touched upon it briefly earlier on, but it's just, frankly, it's the stiff competition in the Eastern Conference to make the All-Star game as a guard. Which is why I was talking about the positionless basketball thing, which is why I was talking about the extra roster spots. No matter what, I feel like with this group of guys, you're gonna feel like players are being snubbed. And I'll talk about who those guys are in a second, but yeah, just open up the All-Star game to more spots, make the benches positionless, stop this. But anyways, going to the guys that are going to be competing with him, and frankly the guys that are ahead of him in that department, let's talk about the locks for the All-Star game. First and foremost, DeMar DeRozan is not a guard. DeMar DeRozan has been a forward. I know not a lot of people have kept up with him. Maybe not necessarily, you know, alluding to Raptors fans, because I'm sure a lot of Raptors fans were still following him in San Antonio. But he's been, you know, just general NBA, sorry. But yeah, in San Antonio, he's been a forward for just a long time now that I just don't understand why DeMar DeRozan is listed as a guard for the All-Star game. Nonetheless, DeMar DeRozan is an absolute lock for the All-Star game this year. He has been playing crazy, and frankly, as a Raptors fan, again, excuse me, as a Raptors fan, I absolutely love seeing DeMar get his roses and get, well, love from the NBA community. I'll always hold a spot in my heart for DeMar. So I absolutely love that so much attention has been paid to him. Past him, Zach LaVine, probably his running mate, is definitely a lock for the All-Star game as well. The Bulls have been crazy good. They're definitely getting 2 All-Stars, like, without a doubt, like with LaVine and DeMar. I don't really just see a debate against that point. Yeah, like, LaVine has been crazy good, crazy efficient, deadly scorer. He's got that thing on lock. Do I think those guys are the Eastern Conference starters? like, yeah, there's a good chance. Maybe Levine is selected by the coaches. I think DeMar is a starter for sure. I don't think there's any question about that. But nonetheless, I think those two guys are locks for the game. Now, we're going to go for another lock here, James Harden. And for those of you that are still on the train that James Harden fell off, blah, 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 shut up. Just shut up. Like, I don't get me wrong, James Harden was definitely a better player last year than he is this year. And I mean, frankly, so much so to the point where, like, last year I was on the train that I thought Harden was a better player for the Nets overall than Kevin Durant was. This year, like, it's not even close. I, like, would not be caught dead making that again, excuse me, making that take this year. Like, Kevin Durant's by far and away better than him at this point. But, like, James Harden is still James Harden. He's still a good player. He's averaging, I think, around, like, what is, like, 22, 8, and 10, like, if we're rounding up. So he's easily going to make it considering where the Brooklyn Nets are in the standings. He's a lock. He's an easy lock. Another guy that I think will probably be a lock. I don't feel as great about this one, but I still feel fairly confident, mostly because, frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets voted in by the fans. I think the fans like him enough. Trae Young. Trae Young just has some crazy statistics, despite the fact that the Hawks, you know, don't have the greatest record out of the bat. And I know for me personally, I factor in team success when it comes to All-Star games, and obviously Trae Young is the outlier to the point. Nonetheless, I think at his averages, like, there's no way that Trae Young doesn't make the All-Star game. So that leaves just the 2 flex spots in the All-Star game. And there's still a bunch of guys that are just deserving here, right? Like, obviously with Fred, you also have somebody like Bradley Beal, LaMelo Ball, Darius Garland, Jaylen Brown. Like, it's a competitive field. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. I do think that Fred has a leg up on these guys for the most part. Like, I'm fairly confident, and this is me, I guess, skipping ahead to the conclusion, but you might as well just call this my conclusion. I do think Fred can secure one of those last 2 spots. And again, like, there's going to be at least 3 guys here that you're going to feel like got snubbed from the All-Star game, but that's just the nature of it, really. With what we were talking about earlier in terms of, you know, the lack of positions and I guess the restrictions and DeMar DeRozan being listed as a guard when he's actually a forward. Yeah, I don't think there's any way around it. Like, guys are going to get snubbed, so to speak. For the most part, though, I do think it'll be Fred. I think he has a little bit of a subconscious bias here as well, and I'll get into that, where with guys like LaMelo Ball and maybe like with guys like LaMelo Ball and Darius Garland, I feel like there's this kind of inherent bias here, similar to, say, like, if we're talking about, like, you know, an MVP race or something, where there's times where you don't pick the younger guy because you feel like, oh, whatever, they're gonna have plenty of cracks at this, you know, throughout their career. So if we have a chance to give this guy his due now, like, I'm sure this guy will resurface. And I do feel like those inherent biases can play against, you know, guys like LaMelo, guys like, Darius Garland. Like, obviously, Freddy isn't, like, old, but, like, he's definitely on the older side of this group. Frankly, I'd have to double check it. I actually think is it him or Beal that's the oldest player in this group? Anyways, can't remember that off the top of my noggin, but it's one of those two. I do think that, like, subconscious bias and, like, that bias, like, when it comes to, like, in this case, the coach's selection, will help Fred out. And why I brought up the advanced analytics earlier, and obviously, like, even just the whole eye test argument, it's the coaches that are selecting these spots at this point, and frankly, with the coaches selecting, I actually feel a lot more confident that Fred VanVleet would get a spot, because I think the coaches can look at Fred's value to the Raptors and absolutely see the case for him being an All-Star better than, with all due respect, fans would. So with all that in mind, is Fred VanVleet an All-Star this season? Yeah, I think so. That's gonna do it for me today. Thank you so much for putting up with my little bit of congestion, coughing, stuff like that. I know it came into play a couple times in this video, so I appreciate it. For anybody wondering, I'm feeling fine. Definitely well past the peak of it. And even the peak was very short-lived, so yeah, it's whatever. But what do you folks think? Is Fred VanVleet an All-Star? There is some, as I've talked about, there is some stiff competition for him to make the All-Star game. He's got a great case, so comment below why or why not you think that Fred will make the game. Subscribe to the channel, please and thank you. Very much so appreciate it. Like the video as well. As I said, it goes a long way in helping the video reach a bigger audience. And it goes a long way in my heart to just seeing the likes go up, so please. That's gonna do it for me here today. Thank you for coming to my flu game edition of the video this week. That's gonna do it for me. I will see everybody next time.